So we thought we found our dream home, but it nearly destroyed our health and our finances. Everybody talks about making six figures, but nobody talks about what it's like to lose six figures and also have to support your family. I'm going to walk through that exactly today. So I'm going to give you guys the setup, kind of where we started with this journey. And so, we just quit our 9 to 5s. My daughter was just born, and my daughter 5 months later was diagnosed with Dravet syndrome, 1 in 16,000 rare epilepsy disease and syndrome. There was a lot that came at us very quickly. But as you know by now, if you've been following, is we're not victims, and we make plays right off the bat. And so we instantly thought about, what are the solutions for this? We came in contact with one of the nation's Dravet specialists online, which is crazy, through Twitter. And so we were at Cincinnati Children's at the time. We were connecting with a Dravet specialist, top 3 in the nation, on Twitter, and Cincinnati Children's actually connected us as well. And we had this like really, really real, raw connection to this individual, Scott Perry. Shout out to you, man. You've been a blessing. And we moved to Texas. We moved to DFW. And it was so quick. It was such a quick turnaround. We talked to Scott. He was telling us all about, the new Dravet specialty that was opening down here in DFW in 2023, that we needed to be part of this. Our whole life we lived in Cincinnati, Ohio. It was very shocking. I just quit my 9 to 5. My wife was still technically working. And eventually, very quickly after, she quit her 9 to 5, and we moved across the nation. And for the first 8 months, it was almost like a miracle. Logan had 0 seizures, and this is coming off of a year where she had 22. And we had almost zero control, it felt like, to where we got down here. We worked with Scott, and things just turned, it was awesome. Very quickly after, 8 months into the journey, she had her first seizure. We didn't think too much about it. Seizures never good, but, and we assessed what was going on. We have a lot of detail and data behind that. We have an entire tracking system for her situation, so we can refer back at any given point in time. But all in all, we moved on. We kind of brushed that one off and said, hey, first seizure in 2023, coming off a year of 22, I'd consider that a win. We marked it up to an eye appointment the day she had before. They shine the light in her eye. For anyone that knows, that can cause delayed seizure responses, and we kind of moved on. Well, back into 2023, she had 2 more, so 3 total in 2023. In 2024 got really, really rough. We couldn't get, it felt like we could not conclude on what was happening. Like, some people would mark it up to just be, it's just Dravet syndrome. It just, this is just what happens. We just didn't accept that answer. And so in 2024, like, it got pretty bad, to say the least, to where she had 15 seizures, not as much as 2022. But for anyone that does know and deals with Dravet syndrome, they know seizures aren't the only thing. It's development, and it's general offness, where you could be at threat of a seizure pretty much all day. So the lifestyle shifts drastically. And so we moved down here. We took a risk by, quitting the 9 to 5s, making sure my daughter's health was right, living in a really nice neighborhood for her. And we wanted to take that financial risk on at the time, because it was a financial risk per se, because we just didn't know what life had to throw our way. And we wanted to at least be proactive in the situation. And so we got here, and all of a sudden we realized mid-2024, we start talking to even another functional neurologist. And he says, let's do her blood and urine test. And this is the mid to back end of 2024. And her blood and urine tests come back to be sky high mold and mycotoxin counts that they have never seen before. And wow, our whole world changed right then and there. Not only, it already did change with the diagnosis to begin with, but wow, that was a lot to take in, because the house we moved in, the confusion we had for like the last year and a half led to this not being a Dravet problem, and this being a mold problem and a mycotoxin problem. For anyone that does not know what mold and mycotoxins and the extent of the devastating impact this can leave on a child, especially of neurological condition, it is the worst possible duo that you could have. Mycotoxins or neurotoxins. Neurotoxins and neurological disorders do not mesh well, to say the least. Mold is a biblical thing. Mold is a very disastrous thing for anybody out there, especially with somebody that deals with Dravet syndrome. And I look at this as an opportunity because, we saw this situation occur and be present, and we got out of our house right then and there. But we did not know what was coming our way. So back into November, we kind of get the news that our house has mold. We do a mold test after this, we get the neurological test back and the blood and urine test back. And we're like, wow, this is like a much bigger deal. Get our house tested. It shows mold. We were kind of shocked, in fact, and we sent it to our functional neurologist, and he said, you have to move out of the house. But we were actually headed up there that week into Iowa to work with Josh over at Infinity in Iowa. And if anybody is looking for this type of treatment, what Josh does at his clinic in Iowa, and they just also opened one in Minnesota, is nothing short of amazing. So we head up to Iowa. We don't fully understand the extent of our house, but we're out of our house for 2 weeks. And we move up to Iowa, or not move up to Iowa, but go stay in an Airbnb for 2 weeks up there, which was a crazy experience to say the least, just to get there. And like I said, the neurological disorder that comes with Dravet syndrome and the overall development is very scary in many ways, to where we had an emergency plane landing on the way up there. And so I don't think my cortisol has ever been higher in my life. It was like straight fight or flight. I'm usually pretty cool, calm, and collected, man. I was in like, I need to save my little girl on this plane type of deal. And I've never felt my body have that much adrenaline in my life, literally. So to say the least, that 2-week stint was very stressful. And we come to find out when we're up there, I talk with Josh and talking with everybody about the professionals that understand this, is like, we're going to have to move. And so that reality came at a quick rate. We're in our house, we're building our finances, we're financially free to a certain extent. But at the same time, like, we just weren't expecting to lose our house. It was a beautiful house. We moved across the nation for this. It was next to my literal in-laws in their backyard, essentially. Perfect setup. My parents moved to this neighborhood. My other in-laws moved to this neighborhood. Like, it was insane setup. Just beautiful, perfect. And we come to the realization we have to move out of our house. We don't have a down payment saved because we weren't planning on selling our house. The builder doesn't care. The insurances don't care. And all of a sudden, this thing escalated like wildfire. I mean, it was 0 to 100 really, really quick. I was shocked. I mean, I'm still blown away to this day. And we were filming this in April of the following year, of the December, 4 months ago. And the experience that we went through, I don't even know how to really put this into words, but just think if you're the sole provider of your family. Speaking to my sole providers out there, you have 2 little kids, you have a wife or spouse, if you're the female of the house, and your kids and your wife rely on your income and your finances. Your daughter's health relies on getting out of the house as soon as humanly possible, giving her the best treatment, buying an LZ30 laser. That's a $7,000 laser, like everything that comes with that. We just spent $22,000 to go up to Iowa for this specific treatment. It was out of pocket. And so it wasn't like we weren't spending money for her treatment, but all of a sudden life came at us so quick. And I want to walk you through my mindset during this time. So I think how do I put this? The initial shock was kind of like, okay, what do we do? But as a father of 2 little girls and a wife, and somebody that is a sole provider, you go into almost like savage mode. You kind of put your emotions to the back and you just figure out a way. And that's exactly how this played out. So initially, I mean, I'm talking like right off the bat. My mindset was we're gonna make some major plays. Thank God that we previously to this moment build up our finances to where we could handle any financial concern. Technically speaking, we had just be transparent. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but we had a couple $1 million invested. We had plenty of cash. We were in a good position financially. But that was all from the previous decade to get to this point, and like all the hard work that went into it. It did not come easy. For anyone that out there thinks it's just, oh, it's just cake when you have a bunch of money. It's not. There's a lot more that goes into it than money. And I think a lot of people have that mindset of like tax the billionaires, or like the billionaires don't have any struggles in life. There's some things that money can't buy. And so good thing we had the finances to be able to have the liquidity to move around, to do what we needed to do in the meantime. But that did not stop what's known as Dravet syndrome. That did not stop the neurotoxins from getting in my daughter's brain. That did not stop the mold from being in my daughter's body. And to detox that, to which we currently are as of today. And my daughter this morning was going through a little bit of detox phase where she was not doing well. And there's, we have peaks and valleys at this point in time with the detox phase. The focus was just getting a dang house. And I knew, and I talked to my wife about this many times, in the same neighborhood that we lived in, there was about 4 or 5 options available at the time. And I've always told her, I said, if we ever move from this house, we're looking from 2xing the cost of our current house, and we're going to go into probably $1 million home. Like, that's just the reality of it. Based if we want to stay in this neighborhood, which was, we didn't have the flexibility of moving anywhere in DFW because our family moved to this specific neighborhood because of the specific special needs that my daughter has. So we didn't have like flexibility. Like, sure, we had the money to go do it, but we didn't have the flexibility. So my thought was, get on Redfin, look at all the options in this neighborhood, and pick a house. And I don't care what it is, just let's get in. And that's exactly what we did. And we found a great house where, it wasn't like our first choice, but it was a house, and it was the choice was not to get the best house. The choice was to get my daughter the best protection and best situation. And to do this so quick, because we were in Iowa for 2 weeks, and our only thought was getting back to baseline and getting back to, regular life. And we come back to lose a house, and we don't get to live anywhere permanent, and we have zero stability, and she needs all the stability in the world. And a lot of times, lights and sound and all these little tiny things the average parent would not think about impacting a kid is extremely hypersensitive to somebody with Dravet syndrome. Extremely hypersensitive. I'm a pretty laid back dude when it comes to like children, like, figuring their way out. I have come to hate the sound of a car going down the street with a big motor because of what my daughter, how she's impacted by that and how she reacts to that. And of course, as she gets better and out of this mold and mycotoxin phase, I think that some of that sensitivity will go away, and we were building towards that. But man, I become super hypersensitive to because I see her. My wife and I are so in tune with each other. We can look at each other and realize she's off or she's on or whatever the case is. So, this instantly was a massive issue across the board with my wife's health. My wife was having some health issues. My other daughter was having eczema. I was having some knee problems, some general symptoms with people with mold and mycotoxins show and appear, but most people don't realize how, to the extent it actually like can impact them. And once you move out, you realize how big of a deal it actually was. Like, my wife said she would wake up like a brick hitter every day, and she's like an early riser, and that's not my wife at all. And my knee was having trouble from going on a couple-mile walk, which is not me. I'm very active. I box. I work out every single day. Just some weird symptoms. She had a breakout on her face, just my daughter had eczema. And all of this was caused to mold. And what was crazy is, like, we moved across the country. I thought we were doing the right thing. It felt like we made like the wrong choice. And the first house we bought it contingent upon a mold and mycotoxin test, and that mold and mycotoxin test came back positive. And we were in the hospital that day, an ER visit for my daughter's heart rate spike at 200 plus. And it was very shocking, the metabolic adjustment, we come to find out. In an ice storm in Dallas, and we find out that first house we tried to buy was no longer because it had mold and mycotoxins, because this is a common problem in Texas, by the way. For anyone that doesn't know, reach out to me. It's in the HVAC, just so you know. And I'm an HVAC expert. So the weight that was on our shoulders to make this happen, it was like, we have the money. We're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to buy this next house, move it, but we can't. And we're stuck in a temporary housing situation that had no furniture, because we're trying to just like get our stuff. We lost all of our clothes. We lost all of our furniture. We lost all of our self-service. Everything, 99% of our personal belongings were lost in the mold and mycotoxin issue because you can't bring it. Even our dogs were at risk because we had to shave them because they had mycotoxins in their fur, and that spurred up my daughter's symptoms when they came into the temporary housing, to where we had to keep them in the garage, shave them, defungal, everything. So the costs were crazy, but the costs were about $300,000. It cost about $150,000 to get out of the house, losing all of our stuff. But we also had to have a down payment on a new house, and that was not like planned for. So it wasn't like we were expecting that. And that was another $178,000. So we were at $300,000. Insurance does not cover mold for these types of situations in Texas, we came to find out. And our only option was just to sell the house. I worked some magic. I got a buyback from the builder, thank God. And we were able to at least get out of our house 3 months later, but we already lived in the new house during that time because we needed to make those moves. That was a lot. But what that taught me during this time was, finances are important to get together and make sure you're focused on your finances. But the bigger thing is making sure the money does not hold you back from getting what you actually need, which is the health of my daughter in the situation. And so, the money, the freedom, the security that this has brought me, although there's a lot of things money can't buy, if we didn't have the finances we did, I don't know I don't know what would happen. I know a lot of families reached out to us during this time, and they said that they lived in the mold for just extended periods of time. But like with my daughter's situation and how severe it is, we just couldn't do that. But some families can't afford to move out of the home, and some families can't afford the $300,000 bill we had to foot randomly. And it pains me to hear those stories, but it also reminds me that you have to start now because you never know what's coming your way. And what this taught me was obviously to start. I'm so thankful we started at an early age at 22, 23 years old. But for anybody out there that's trying to, think that life isn't going to come their way, or they're not going to be at a crossroads at points, or they're crazy, because you never know what's going to happen to you. I didn't think my daughter was going to be diagnosed. I didn't think that we were going to have a mold and mycotoxin problem. I didn't think any of this stuff was going to happen, but it's cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if we weren't prepared, we probably would be in a worse situation for sure. But we might have to be stuck in the house. We might have to be stuck in the position we were in. Her health would deteriorate. Our health would deteriorate, which it was deteriorating. We're even on gut protocols and mold protocols at this point in time. And so the question is, would I rather lose $300,000 or my family's health? I mean, that's really the question you have to ask yourself. And I know some people that have taken on HELOCs and big mortgages to be able to handle this type of situation. They paid off for 30 years. And we were able to pay cash, and we were able to handle this out of pocket. And it wasn't a great feeling. Even if you're financially free, you don't want to spend $300,000 unexpected and be in a really, really tight position. Like, it's not a great feeling, but it also changed the way I think about wealth. I could go buy a Lamborghini today, cash. I could go buy a $6 million house if I wanted to. But what does that really bring me? Because what about the situation that we're faced with if we weren't able to do what we were able to do? Or what if I, early on in my career when I was making good money, I just blew that money, and I didn't position our family accordingly so that when these things come, because they will, it's inevitable, something will happen in your life that's drastic. How are you going to handle that? That's a question you have to ask yourself. And so I've redefined what wealth is to me throughout the situations, give me a lot of perspective. And material items, which we lost everything of, just lost all relevance to what the little it already had in my mind. And it was it's a mindset shift that is different. You'll be in a much different place after something like this happens to you, and like what you valued will change. And so something for us personally was the finances were a good spot to be, but also having the flexibility to make the moves that we did. We went to Iowa for a $22,000 trip, which we're heading up there, another Iowa trip in a month that's going to cost probably about the same. And we were able to move around and get rid of things and get new clothes because we had to. We got new furniture. We furnished a whole entire new house that we moved into. We were able to buy a house that was on the market that was 2x our old cost because of the situation we were in. We could have paid cash with it entirely, but we decided to set it up to where we get the old house proceeds to pay it off and give us some leeway from a cash perspective. And so we have that flexibility, that financial education to be able to lead us through this journey. And I don't think I would be in the same position right now if we weren't educated financially and we didn't have the financial situation we did. But at the same time, it taught me that when push comes to shove, like, health is everything, and no amount of money can dictate or like trump health. And so I think it's really important to think about, how do you be preventative with the health measures you take? In this new house, what we've done is we put dehumidifiers in, we put air scrubbers in, we've put air doctors in. We've equipped this whole house so that it doesn't have the same issue again. We've been preventative this time because we were just, it was negligence on our end that this was a Texas issue moving here. And so what preventative measures and health things can you spend today to protect your family's health, to where that is already more important than any amount of dollars that you could have, so that you don't go through these things? It's going to cost you a lot more in the long run, number one, but there's nothing better than health. If you have $1 million and you feel like you're sick every day, there's nothing valuable about that. Never neglect the health. Always invest yourself, and you'd be amazed that the health side of things is just, the priority when push comes to shove. But many people don't think about that until push does come to shove. They neglect their health. They eat out. They do all these things that, are probably hurtful, but they don't really think of the long-term impact until it actually happens. And then their whole life shifts. So in the comments, guys, what's one thing that you're prioritizing that might be costing your peace of mind? I want you guys to leave that comment on this podcast. And I want you to also think about that one thing that is costing you peace of mind right now, that you're not spending money on because you don't think it's that important yet, until it becomes. And you're living in a scarcity mindset if you're doing that. But I would like you to put that in a comment. What's one thing you're prioritizing that might be costing you peace of mind right now? Put that in the comments, and I will see everybody next week.
You've been listening to Money on My Mind with your host, Brendan Schlagbaum. If you found value in today's discussion, share it with someone who could benefit from it too. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, so you never miss a money mastery tip. Until next time, stay passionate about your financial journey and keep taking bold steps towards your money goals.